This is Anthony Pascal.
And this is Laurie Elster, and this is the All Access Star Trek podcast. Today we have 5 more Prodigy episodes to review. We'll be looking at episodes 206 through 210. But first, we've got news, and this is Tony's specialty, but I'm going to set it up, which is Paramount Global has officially agreed to the Skydance merger. So they have struck a deal. There is a 45-day sort of shopping period when Paramount Global can evaluate other proposals, but I don't think that's going to change anything. Do you?
Well, I mean, one might think, well, God, aren't there all these other bidders out there? And, you know, there are other potential bidders out there. None of them are really expressing an interest in the whole thing. They just want pieces of it. But there's an important component, which is if Paramount did accept a different bid, which they can, there's a poison pill in this deal where they have to pay Skydance $400 million.
Oh, how do I make a deal like that?
So any other deal not only needs to be better, it needs to be more than $400 million better. So this provision is mostly to protect Sherry and the board from potential future lawsuits. But this seems to be a done deal. Everyone seems to like it. I mean, Wall Street hasn't fully embraced it.
So wait, talk to me like I'm Laurie. When you say Wall Street hasn't embraced it, what do you mean?
Well, the stock went up before the deal was announced and then has kind of stopped. You know, the deal offers a premium to current shareholders, but some people feel like maybe another deal could be even better, but they don't think that that's coming. So, you know, often with these things, stocks shoot up quite a bit before merger, and it went up a little bit, you know, and then kind of stopped. Some analysts are for it. Some are, let's wait and see. Certainly, like Hollywood types are happy because David Ellison is saying all the right things. He's saying, I'm going to keep it together. I love content. I love Hollywood. I love making movies. You know, that they plan to expand the slate of movies from Paramount. Generally, Hollywood people think it's a good deal. Wall Street people are not earlier. They were kind of very against this deal. So they've moved the Wall Street people to at least wait and see, which is pretty good, actually. So some of the specifics, Ellison would be CEO and a guy named Jeff Shell, who used to run NBC Universal, would be president. I think the biggest question for Star Trek fans is, what does this mean for Star Trek? Star Trek was brought up in an investor call. There was like a slide with, the important franchises, and they showed only 4 of them, one of which was Star Trek. And they talked about how they're going to reevaluate the franchises within Paramount to maximize their, value and all that. I think this could lead to, maybe some changes in the future. Things that I think wouldn't surprise people is trying to make the Star Trek universe more comprehensive, like the Marvel universe.
Which I do sort of feel like they're on their way to doing. I mean, the more you watch Prodigy, the more you see that they're incorporating things from Picard and Discovery and all that.
Yeah, but also the Kelvin movies. I think we're going to see licensing of Star Trek, certainly the content library of legacy shows, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw originals, whether they're brand new originals or the current originals licensed to other outlets. Yeah, there's no obvious this is a great thing that, like, some people look at this deal. It's just you see people saying, oh, well, this means that legacy happens, or maybe Picard is going to be released in 4K now. It's like, I don't know where people come up with these ideas. Like, everyone's got their wish list and they think the new owners are going to make everything happen and it's going to be like Christmas. It's not going to be the situation where like the company gets split up, the Paramount Plus gets shut down, the movie rights get split off, and some of the more problematic things that we were concerned about. None of that is going to happen. But I think in general, it's going to be a good thing for Star Trek in the long term.
It sounds like it. I mean, David Ellison has a history with Star Trek.
Yeah, so, he mentioned that during the call. He mentioned that he produced a couple Star Trek movies. I think it will be good, but I'm still, we're still at a wait and see. It's still almost certain that Paramount Plus is going to merge with or be formed into a joint venture. They did talk about that on the call. They're talking about the kind of Uber super bundle. So they're probably going to partner up with a technology company, work together in a joint venture for something that was kind of like what Hulu used to be. Maybe two of them will start. Zaslav from Warner Brothers Discovery this week, not talking about this, but he said it's almost a certainty that we're going to see some kind of bundling like that in the near future. So I think before the end of this year, Paramount Plus is going to become something else, and that will
good.
and the Star Trek content is going to therefore, go through some kind of change through that transition.
I mean, I'd love to see the Star Trek content get wider. I hate the word content, actually. I'd love to see the Star Trek shows get wider distribution. I have my own battles with the Paramount Plus app through the Fire TV, so clean that up too.
That's one thing. They talked about how, bringing in best-in-class technology and really enhancing the experience. So they don't want to get rid of Paramount Plus. They want to make it better, or whatever this new thing is. The fact that they're talking about making more movies, they're going to increase that slate, which could be good for Star Trek, because Star Trek seems to always be on deck, but never gets onto the actual calendar.
I noticed that has been happening.
Or it did get on the calendar a couple years ago, and then they took it off again. So
yeah, always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
This is probably good news for animation. One of the big pushes that Skydance has, is their Skydance animation. Lasseter is part of Skydance. They talked a lot about Nickelodeon, now that they have access to all of that IP, which includes Star Trek Prodigy, and they have an animation deal with Netflix for animated movies. Skydance does. So they want to have this new Paramount include something like a Pixar or DreamWorks Animation, some that kind of become a big Hollywood animated powerhouse. And so that could be good for maybe, an animated Star Trek feature, either streaming or actually in theaters someday. And they're really into interactive media. So maybe we're going to get, a real Star Trek game in the future. Who knows? So there's all sorts of possibilities here.
That's good. This is basically the possibility that we were hoping for.
Yeah. Now, after the 45 days, it needs to be approved by regulators. So this probably won't actually happen until next year. So, this year they're still going to be cutting costs. People are going to get fired. All the stuff that, that stuff isn't stopping.
I was hoping they would, because there's so many layoffs coming. It's crazy.
Well, they're talking about $2 billion in cost savings.
Jesus.
So lots of people, it's just
awful. All right. Well, let's move on to the flashy side of things and talk about Comic-Con.
All right.
Because San Diego Comic-Con is coming this month. Yeah, it kicks off July 24th. And there's going to be there are a bunch of things going on, 3 big things going on panel-wise. So one, the Star Trek Universe panel in Hall H on Saturday of Comic-Con at 1:45 p.m. Pacific. And it's moderated by Justin Simeon, which I love. He's the creator of the show Dear White People. He actually has a new docu-series coming out about Black Hollywood. But he is such a Star Trek fan. We had him on After Trek. He loves it, and he knows all about it, and he's a joyful, fun person. So that is a great choice.
I'm wondering if, because sometimes, like they've had Tig Notaro do it, I wonder if there's some Star Trek project that he's involved in that we don't know about.
That would be great. The shows on that panel will be Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Starfleet Academy, and Section 31. It looks like Alex Kurtzman will be on all of those panels.
There's producers and there's actors on all of the panels. One thing I was hoping for Section 31, Michelle Yeoh's not going to be there. She's probably shooting a movie or something like that.
And it looks like no actors on the Starfleet Academy panel.
Yeah, which is, and we're going to get into that. That is a little surprising, especially based on some of the news we're going to get into soon. Mike McMahon's going to be there. That's going to, the Lower Decks thing was probably going to be a lot of fun. Sam Richardson's going to be there. I'm a huge fan of his for Section 31. There's footage for all of these things except for Starfleet Academy. So we're probably going to get a trailer for Strange New World Season 3 or teaser. It's my prediction.
Yeah, it won't be a full trailer.
It's definitely something for Section 31. I mean, how could they not? And it definitely for Lower Decks. I mean, for sure something from Lower Decks. I mean,
I feel like they've been waiting till Comic-Con for Section 31. Like, that might be a full trailer.
yeah, absolutely.
Here's just a weird question, but do you think there's a chance they'd surprise the audience and Michelle Yeoh would actually turn up? Or is that a better thing to announce because you pull in way more people?
It's better to, yeah. I mean, she could be a surprise thing just if she just ended up having to be there, but it's likely she's not even in the country that weekend, you know?
Right, and they'd get way more press and coverage if people knew she was going to be there.
Yeah. I mean, she was mentioned in the press release, because, when they describe the Section 31 movie, it's always Section 31 movie starring Academy Award winner,
yes.
Michelle Yeoh. So
that's what I would do.
It's almost like that's the name of the movie.
Right.
From a news point of view, the Academy discussion could be the most interesting because it's the thing we know the least about.
Yes.
And maybe Section 31.
Section 31, too. We know very little.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. They do promise, surprises. So maybe they drop a hint about, Alex will probably say something like, we're still working on something else.
Right.
Like he did at Comic-Con last year.
Right. In addition to the Star Trek Universe panel, there is on Sunday at 10 a.m. A Prodigy panel. There's going to actually a screening and panel.
The episode is going to be one we're about to talk about. Broken Mirror, Correct Mirror, what's it called? The Mirror Universe one.
The Mirror one.
Episode 14.
The panelists, they're going to have Kate Mulgrew, Brett Gray, and the Hageman brothers. And I saw Aaron said he's going to be there too.
I hope they at least mention Prodigy during the Star Trek Universe panel. I mean, when you watch Prodigy on Netflix, it starts with the Star Trek Universe logo. So technically it's part of the Star Trek Universe, but it's not part of the Star Trek Universe on Paramount Plus. It's part of the larger, the greater Star Trek Universe. They get their own panel, which actually, I mean, they get a whole hour. They get, all Prodigy for an hour, which includes the screening, but that'll be a lot of fun. And Paramount's doing a booth. They're calling it the Star Trek Menagerie. It's been a while since they've done a Star Trek booth. There's usually, like I guess Star Trek section, maybe to a larger Paramount booth. So this will be fun. There'll be opportunities to take photos and stuff. And it won't just be the new shows. They're saying there's going to be stuff for the original series there.
Yeah. Creatures. They said creatures from across the franchise.
Yeah. Get your picture with the salt monster or whatever.
Yeah. The Salt Vampire.
Yeah. The Megatu. Who knows? There'll be some kooky classic Star Trek stuff there. Maybe you could jump through the Guardian of Forever. It'll be all that kind of stuff.
I would like to jump through the Guardian of Forever.
Yeah. I'm just making this up. I have no idea what they're going to do, but it'll be fun.
I like to speculate.
Also, IDW is doing an official panel on Sunday. The timing's difficult. It's literally, it starts just as the Prodigy panel ends. So it's, you kind of, there's no way to get both. If you've ever been to Comic-Con, you can never do back-to-back panels.
There's no running through the hallway to get where you need to go. No,
because there's lines for everything. You have to pick one or the other.
That's silly. I'm just saying. I wouldn't put this, if you've got Star Trek things, spread them out so people can go.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's talk about Starfleet Academy, which we mentioned earlier. This week they announced 3 cast members, and it's the kids. It's the first kids they've announced.
Yep. No big names.
Kids is a funny name. They're all in their early 20s.
Yeah, actually. They're not kids.
But I think they're all playing pre-20. They're all, I think
teenagers.
What did Newsom say? I think they're all supposed to be around 18 or something.
I mean, that's an age-old TV tradition, so.
Of course. Well, you never want to actually cast 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds because there's all the sorts of rules you have to deal with on set with anyone under 18. You have to they have to go to classes and all sorts of stuff. So,
right.
So I hadn't heard of any of these people. I think I
was just going to ask because usually I've never heard. I mean, I like to know who people are, but these ones I didn't know.
Bella Shepard is one of them. She's actually led a couple shows, including Wolfpack. I think I might have watched a trailer for that show. I'm curious because it's interesting. Like they weren't clear who their characters were. They're just cadets, right?
Right.
But the way they were ordered in the press release. So even though Bella Shepard has more experience, including leading a show, I think Carice Brooks might be the lead character if there is a lead character.
Right.
He's has hardly any experience, but
right.
They all have some experience and training. and they're all attractive young people. They're, this is like exactly, if you asked AI to generate a casting announcement for Star Trek Academy a month ago, this is what you would have gotten. They would have looked like this, and they would have, had this kind of thing, nothing against these people at all. But I mean, we learn nothing about it except that they will have talented, young, hot people.
Yeah, I wish they'd included character names and some character information, because that is fun.
Yeah.
But I'm sure they're all excited that they get to work with Paul Giamatti and Holly Hunter.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess the other thing is some people thought, the Skydance deal, maybe they're going to, cancel Starfleet Academy and announce Legacy. Things are still happening as they were happening.
Yeah.
Apparently they're going to start shooting in August. I mean, I guess we'll learn more in a couple weeks, but
yeah, I don't want them to cancel it. No, I'm excited. I mean, the Holly Hunter thing and Paul Giamatti really got me excited about the show.
Yeah. That being said, who knows where that first season's going to end up? Because as we've been saying, Paramount Plus is not going to be Paramount Plus. This thing's not going to show up until early 2026, maybe.
Yep.
So who knows what streaming outlet the new, by that time, Paramount will be the new Paramount, whatever that is.
Right.
And who knows where they are selling their streaming content, including their Star Trek streaming content.
Right.
This could end up on Amazon for all we know.
Right. Well, it could be good. So we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, we have a little bit of Prodigy news before we start our review, which is that season 2 hit the Netflix top 10 kids charts internationally, like in about 8 different countries. It got into the top 10, mostly in Europe, surprisingly even in France, and it's been out there since March. So that's kind of cool.
That was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, go fans, go.
It is still on the chart in Germany.
Nice.
So that Germans love Star Trek. It's crazy how much they love Star Trek.
It. Everybody should love it.
Everyone should, but Germans love Star Trek more than most countries, by per capita. Let's say.
I like it.
The unfortunate thing is it didn't show up in the USA charts, even though the launch did. Season 1 launched it.
Right.
I think it's more competition right now for those kids charts. But when I interviewed the Hageman brothers, they're like, it not only needs to do well, it needs to do gangbusters to get a third season. So is this enough?
Right, because Netflix looks at everything immediately. There's no slow burn with Netflix. Like when they're making their decisions, they're looking at what happens in the first couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they're still, because the thing about the show is it's still building and it's still getting buzz out there. We're covering it. A lot of other sites are still covering it. What's interesting is the number one show for most of the last week was another show that just had a second season for kids shows, which I'm sure all of you watched, Unicorn Academy.
Is it about unicorns going to school?
I guess. I don't know. One can only assume. What do you teach a unicorn? I don't know. But so when I looked at Google Trends, Prodigy is outpacing. So there's more buzz about Prodigy, but, more parents are plopping their kids down. The thing is, the kids charts cover all sorts of shows. And the Unicorn Academy is clearly something for very young kids where you just sit your kid down and you say, here, watch a season, and you go out for drinks.
Okay. I don't know who you've been babysitting, but actually, I think they should do Starfleet Unicorn Academy.
There we go. Like it hits all the right buttons.
Yes. Then you can go leave your kids in front of the TV. Go out for drinks. Nice.
So, we actually will know in a few months exactly how well Prodigy did, because Netflix does release actual numbers for everything.
Right. Which they didn't used to do, but now they do.
Yeah, but they do it on a very, very slow basis. Like in May, They released their numbers for 2023. We won't know for a while.
Well, we can keep our fingers crossed. Because, the idea of at least getting a Prodigy movie would be delightful. Really, I want a bunch more seasons. But
I think that an animated Skydance, Nickelodeon, Netflix movie, I could see that happening.
Yeah. Well, when you were talking about it earlier, I was thinking that gives me some hope for Prodigy, for a series of Prodigy movies, like maybe more than one.
Sure, but a full-on third season, I'm not going to say it's not going to happen, but I'm not going to say it's likely. That's right. For sure.
I mean, obviously, like the stuff I follow on social, I'm seeing, I follow a lot of Star Trek accounts and Star Trek fans, but it really is all over my social. Like I have to be careful because people post pictures and spoilers, and we still haven't seen them all. So it is being very much talked about.
You know, by the way, in that article about Netflix on charts, we also reported that Nielsen released numbers for the last week of May, which includes the last episode of Discovery, and that popped back into the chart at number 10. So looking back at all of season 5, Discovery showed up 4 times, which is about the same as Picard's season 3, but it actually underperformed when you look at minutes, and definitely underperformed Strange New World season 2. But still, not a lot of Paramount Plus shows even show up on the Nielsen charts. So,
yeah, I think that's still an accomplishment.
Because it showed up for 3 weeks in a row at the beginning, and then it fell off the charts. And I'm glad they just had one last hurrah as they waved goodbye to the universe.
Yeah, it's nice. Good for them. All right, it's time to look at the next 5 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy. It's a lot. It's a lot of episodes to do 5 at a time.
You know, I mean, maybe this is just arbitrary because we've decided to do it this way. But I talked to Aaron. He says that they do feel like 5-episode blocks. There is for sure a story that feels like it's being told over these 5 episodes.
Yeah, I would agree.
You know, the first impressions are season's doing just as well, I feel, just as strong. It feels more like season 1. It's more episodic, these 5. There's more standalone episodes until you get to the final 2. But I think 6, 7, and 8 all kind of, even though they feed into the big story, they all are, 7, 6 is a kind of a holodeck malfunction. 7 and 8 are Planet of the Week type things. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. And then the last 2 are a definite 2-parter. Yeah. I mean, the thing these reminded me of, it's so funny that I have to remind myself of this, but as I was watching these ones, I was like, oh, right, it's a kid's show. Like, I'd sort of forgotten, like I was thinking about last week when I was saying, the villain's too mustache twirly. And then I'm like, because, Laurie, it's a kid's show. So they don't want a subtle villain that you can't tell is the villain. They want to make it very clear. And so in this case, there were some shenanigans in these episodes that I was like, oh, right, it's kids. So, you have to like the doubles and the personalities and the burping and all the stuff like that, which, I mean, it does amuse me because I am a child, but it's easy to forget because the show is so complex and sophisticated and riveting and entertaining.
That's what I meant by it felt more like season 1, and it's not a dig at all.
Yeah, it's not a dig when I'm saying it either.
What's interesting is 6, 7, and 8 were all kind of typical shenanigan storylines, and then 9 and 10 just got like deadly serious.
Yeah, things got real.
And lore filled it. Like it took a big pivot there. Again, not that that's a bad thing in any way, but yeah, there were many times when I'm like, this is a little silly, we've kind of seen this before, like the episode where they kind of, 8, when you think you're going to see the Borg, because they kind of tease the Borg a lot, and then it turns out to be a Kazon, and it's an evil AI, and
it's Landru.
Right. Yeah. Or like, it's like literally behind the curtain, like Oz, I mean, how many, we've seen this before, in many different incarnations, not just in Star Trek, because these are timeless stories in a way.
Yeah. And they are being introduced to this audience, possibly for the first time. I mean, let's hope they've all seen The Wizard of Oz, but although you never know. But yes, it's introducing certain concepts that may be tropes to us and are not necessarily tropes to kids. And
my concern in the previous episodes the Doctor's still great, but we got some cool Tysus.
Yeah.
You get a sense that Tysus is a cool dude now. Much cooler than we realized he was, which I like.
He's warmed up to the kids, for sure.
And he cares about them, not just, all of the kids, including Michelle, But, he laughs. He has little sayings. He has personality. He's starting to, give us a little more than, generic Starfleet commander with antenna.
Which I would say it often reflects how kids see adults sometimes, because when you're a kid, you see adults as very one-dimensional when you meet them.
The ultimate version of that is the Peanuts cartoons, right?
Right, sure, yes. Even when you can understand what they're saying. Oh, I guess the Peanuts kids do understand the teacher, even though I don't. But, as you start to get to know them, then they soften up and you get to know them a little better. And I like that right away, like he's chastising them about this tricorder, and then he's reassuring them, like, we're not destroying the ship because of you.
Yeah, he sympathizes with them. At Nome, too, I'm not sold on the pivot, the retcon of, he was always the ship's counselor. We just never told you that.
Right.
But I guess they're going to go somewhere with that, although they really haven't. They've just kind of alluded to it. Perhaps, and when Aaron was on the pod, it allows the doctor character to do the cool doctoring, the creating the armbands and saving Gwyn. And, so we get fun scenes of Nome in the holodeck when his boat disappears. But he did try to, he was hiding in the shuttle bay, but then he did try to protect the kids in the finale.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not like a coward, but he definitely was hiding.
Right. Well, you would hide too if that, those things were going after everybody.
Well, he's just a ship's counselor.
Yeah.
Well, what can he do? By the way, just on a side note, in that episode, they are forcing too many "I'm a doctor, not a" things. Because it was very inappropriate when he goes, "I'm a doctor, not an assembly line." It's like, not now. They are literally erasing people from existence left and right. And this is not the time for a quip.
A quip. Yeah, again, that's when I remind myself they're kids don't know the McCoy line, so they're introducing them to that too, in a way.
Fair enough. I mean, it was kind of terrifying what was going on, to so maybe lighten the mood a little bit. But I don't know. I'm like, no, not now, Doctor. Seriously.
Just calling it a quip made me laugh. Like a couple of episodes later, where Zero's describing his life and his I'm jumping way ahead, after he's been damaged. And he describes like his routine is like, keep watch one day, a funny quip the next.
Right. So, if we're just to run through the episodes specifically, we start out with the imposter syndrome, which of course is perhaps a signal to how the kids feel. Certainly one of them. I thought this was a fun twist on the holodeck malfunction trope, in a way, where they show the kids are really smart, but they obviously didn't think things through completely. Well,
they did too good a job in some ways, and then sort of screw it up at the end.
And it certainly was like, baby's first duplicate, because that too is a trope in Star Trek, where you get duplicated in, mirror universe or whatever, timelines.
Prove who the real one is, like fight. You're supposed to fight your double, because what is Star Trek if you don't get to fight your double?
We learn a little bit about each of these characters in how each of them dealt with their doubles. Like Dal and Dal had to fight each other. But the Rocks, again, because Rock and Dal were so cute. They were Team Rock.
Holding hands, skipping down the hall. Oh my God. I loved it. I was like, this is why I love Rock. I loved Rock so much for just the sweetness and the arm around each other, like everything. It was so adorable and perfect.
And then the Jankums had they fought over the who could fix the replicator. And one of the Jankums had the existential crisis. And because Jankum already talks about himself in the third person. So, right. It just got even more weird for him. And I thought that was very funny.
I was confused about why the holograms could exist outside of the holodeck.
The conceit, which I think was also true on the Protostar, is the ship has emitters everywhere.
Right.
But the fact that they could make scannable holograms.
Yes.
I mean, we never saw like data. No one has pulled that. I mean, that is amazing.
Yep.
That they could. In fact, they said that the Zero hologram could read people's minds.
It can only read other holograms. That's what they said. The Zero hologram can read the other hologram's minds.
Oh, okay,
and I was like,
okay.
What?
Right, because they couldn't read real Dal.
Right.
But anyway, it was certainly opportunity for a lot of hijinks. But we learned, little bits about the character, because every one of these episodes is really, at its heart, I believe, a character episode that's plainer when we get into the next episode, which again feels on its surface like a Planet of the Week, evil computer, the race, which is right, Star Wars, and they did it on Voyager. But this is a very important episode, I think, for Dal and Gwyn. Don't you think?
The Fast and the Curious.
Yeah, feels like a pivotal episode, because Dal starts the episode doing a quote unquote captain's log, and everyone's like, why are you doing a captain's log? And by the end, he realizes he shouldn't be doing a captain's log. And I think very tellingly at the end of the episode, he hands it off to Gwyn to finish the log.
Yes.
I think he's starting to get that maybe he shouldn't be captain.
Yeah.
Which is something I brought up in our last pod, and I really think this is where they're going on the show.
Well, because it comes up in a later episode in this cluster also.
Yeah, but this is where I think he's starting to grasp the pivot, that he's starting to get that he certainly doesn't have the support of these guys to be the captain.
Well, it's also, if you look at their attitudes, like she's saying, only one of us has to win. Let's strategize. And he's like, no, I'm going to win. So that's also laying the same groundwork of like a captain doesn't think I want to win the race. A captain thinks, how do we achieve our goal and save our ship?
And then I think right before that, he gets in the face of the Maj, the Kazon, the crazy Kazon, whereas she, and which starts escalating, and then she jumps in, diplomatic, calls him, noble Maj, and totally de-escalates. Again, great captaining, very Picard-like on her part. So she's starting to show the leadership qualities you want in a captain. Although he, every once in a while he does something super heroic, because that's kind of his thing.
Yep.
But that's not enough. That's certainly not enough. So he's at least going to learn an important lesson on how to be a captain, or he's going to drop the whole captain thing entirely.
Yeah, I mean, the whole racing storyline was my sort of least favorite in the whole 5. I wasn't that interested in the race. The Kazon, at first I was like, oi, the Kazon. But then I realized, and I think it's because Rock said it, that there's emotional weight to putting a Kazon in there, because that's who sold them to the diviner.
If you think about it from, a Star Trek fan's point of view, the Kazon are lame, right? Like everyone hated the Kazon. But from these kids' point of view, the Kazon are terrifying.
Yep.
Even though I knew it was a bit of a fake out at the beginning, I still thought the Kazon was being controlled by some like Borg element or something that was driving him crazy. Until I guess it's not that different. It was just an evil computer in the end.
I'm still calling it Landru, but I was also a little confused on that episode about why Murph was so easily captured, because Murph is like super guy, security, super ability guy. So he was captured super fast. I mean, I know they needed Zero to save the day, which was great. That scene was fantastic. But I was like, oh, Murph should have put up more of a fight.
Yeah, and once you control Murph is actually the biggest threat amongst kids. So Murph could hurt the other kids. I thought that was fine. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah, I was like, it shouldn't have been that easy, but it made for some great drama there when they come in and they see Zero suspended, and then the things come down and I will force you to improve. It was all very dramatic and scary. And
Zero got that great hero moment at the end, sacrificing themselves. Like I thought, oh my God, they aren't going to kill off the character, but that explosion I thought terrible. Was going to release Zero as a Medusan. I thought that was going to be where they were going with that. Just cracked the window and tore off the arms and the legs. So I
was worried about the cracked window.
Right. Like, can the little Medusan leak out? I mean, what are the rules?
Can we have pieces of Murph in one spot and pieces of a Medusan in another?
Yeah. Do you just go a little insane looking at the window, Just feel slightly unnerved,
A little bit askew.
Right. one fun thing that this show, this whole season is doing this, but they're having fun with canon, both canon callbacks, but they're creating canon. And I think this episode established a very important thing in canon: sonic toilets.
Well, it's out of order.
Yeah, you do not want to go in there after Jankum's been in there.
Yeah. I like Zero says, the virtues of being non-corporeal. But apparently the whole ship stinks anyway.
Well, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would.
Well, and we know that Jankum has, in the next episode, episode 8, established that he has a very pungent odor, which is interesting to the non-corporeals who become corporeal. They're like, check him out. Him.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, once we had the cracked screen, then it made sense that they all Spock's visor, even though they didn't really make them until they were going to a planet full of Medusans. But I loved when they all came out, they're wearing Spock's visor. Yeah. The protective Medusan visor.
Which were not necessary. So this is another one of those, you show up on a planet and everyone's nice, and your Star Trek brain is going, okay.
What's the catch?
What's going on here? So how evil did you think they really were?
Oh, I thought they were way more evil than they turned out to be.
Yeah, it's just like they were just kind of not being fully disclosed. I thought it was going to be super evil situation.
Yes, I was waiting for everybody to turn on them.
Yeah, like they eat people or, this is just something very bad going on.
The feast of the senses when we eat people. Yeah, I was totally waiting for that.
I mean, even the running of it was essentially the running of the bulls. Like that creature wasn't malevolent. It was essentially a sky whale. It only accidentally scooped you up while it was trying to eat the flowers.
Right.
I thought they were an interesting group, and I hope we get to meet them again. I mean, I think we will, because the whole point was you leave the planet and you start losing your body.
Well, they're going to have to put him back in a suit?
It makes sense. I think that this is a temporary situation. I think the body is temporary. We didn't see any indication of degradation in the next 2 episodes, so it's probably a slow process.
Yep.
So they've got some time to eat and smell Pog and,
and eat the stomach juices of the whatever it was that Dal was drinking.
It was beautifully done. The planet, the rings. I thought the people, that the bodies that they create were kind of really interesting looking, and all the food looked fascinating. The
food was great. I was like, the next cookbook to come out, because these Star Trek cookbooks do come out, it's got to include those things. The Prodigy cookbook. Oh, I want to write it.
You should.
Well, I'm not a recipe developer, so I need to team up with somebody.
So this is another episode where they made a huge contribution to canon, but this is more filling in the blanks, but I thought it was pretty important. Parisi squares.
Yeah.
How many times have you heard Parisi squares? And you saw them wearing the Parisi squares outfits, but we'd never actually seen it. We've seen other kind of sports, the ambo jitsu and the laser tag. I had to think about it, and then I had to go have we never seen Parisi squares? And we never have.
Yeah, until they said it was Parisi squares, I didn't know that's what it was.
I guessed because it had these big giant squares that went up and down. And I'm like, oh, those must be Parisi squares that are going up and down. I mean, it was basically like lacrosse and basketball and American Gladiator.
I mean, I noticed there was other canon stuff in there because they mentioned the Paxons from Clues, and then I had to look up the Calamaranes because I didn't remember who they were, and then I looked them up and was like, oh, they're the ones who tormented Q when he was a human.
Yeah, I mean, there's big and small. Like the previous episode, in the race episode, if you look closely, one of the crashed ships was the USS Cairo, which was mentioned destroyed during the Dominion War. Now we know what happened to it. Those are more freeze frame moments.
Yeah.
But it was actually important because it was all a ruse by Majel. And so again, I'm really, now I'm on Team Majel.
Yeah,
obviously.
I knew it. I knew you would be eventually.
But I didn't mind what, because she spotted the fakes. She was the only one who spotted it was so obvious, but when the Dal who was actually
Zero. Dal was Zero. Pog was Rock.
right, and so the Rock Pog called Janeway's coffee dirt water.
And that's what drove Janeway away. That's what made her be like, all right, fine, I'm going to go sit somewhere else.
You'd think the doctor or Gnome, who's a counsel, someone should have noticed, but certainly Majel, it's obvious they're setting her up to be a major part of the team.
Yep, she's a great addition. I thought it was very cute to see Rock looking cranky because she had Jankum, because she was really Jankum. Hollow right. Rock. Because she doesn't usually look so cranky. She doesn't usually frown and make that face.
But they had the original actors pretending to be the other characters, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
So they didn't have them voice each other. They voiced as the others, which I thought was an interesting choice. But still, I thought it still worked. And
they didn't overdo it. It was just the right amount of time.
By the way, you're not a Seinfeld fan, but I was wondering, like, the way Zero dances, like, totally reminded me of the way Elaine dances on Seinfeld, which is like, she's like famously terrible at dancing.
Like Rob Lowe's character on Parks and Rec, where he just does this terrible, gigantic, floor-clearing dance.
Basically, but even worse. But what was fun was that Jankum can bust a move. Jankum's got, he's got some moves there.
I loved that dance scene. First of all, like I thought it was so beautiful when Zero's learning how to walk and move and getting used to his tongue and getting his first hug and all of that. But then when they're on the dance floor and he's excited to go dance, and you can tell Rock wants to dance, and Jankum's like, "Come on!" And it was just so. These moments of gentle sweetness in the middle of all this danger in sci-fi are so lovely.
Yeah, I mean, the message of these episodes is how important they are to each other, which, of course, culminates in that last episode in 9 and 10. And that was, Zero's big thing at the end of this episode was, this planet may be my nirvana, but they are my family, and I need to stick with them, basically.
Yeah. When Zero said it would be heartbreaking to lose their senses, they added that it's ironic because they never had a heart to break before. It's very funny.
It's all new to them. They are having fun with...
They're loving smells, touches, tastes, burps, everything.
I love Jankum's, he's assessing the burp, right?
I wrote down the quote. It was too good. Ample sound, pungent bouquet. Pog is impressed.
I mean... Jacob's I'm not sure he's growing as a character. He is the comic relief and he's great at it. I would like to see some character growth, but I'm still loving the character, obviously.
Yeah, I see little bits. For him, it's going to be a lot harder and slower. And I feel like it's there, but just not to the same degree.
Perhaps. But, through these 3 episodes, I mean, we're getting little dips back. We're not getting a lot of stuff on the ship. And I was surprised after episode 5, but I kind of get it, that we got no Chakotay. Not even they talk about him a lot, obviously. But not a single flashback, glimpse, anything. And, and we see him in the last frame and he doesn't say anything. This again, in the last episode, we were saying, when do we think they're going to finally get Janeway and Chakotay? I mean, they are really dragging it out with Chakotay. I'm kind of okay with it, but those two are not going to be in the same room together for a long time. We'll see.
I mean, I think the reason we didn't see a lot of him in this group is because there was this idea that he was the one sending the message, even though it turned out he wasn't.
Certainly. But they could have done flashbacks and other stuff. But still, I'm fine with it. Did you believe during this whole thing that Chakotay was the one sending the message, and that they basically told us that. There was no reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah, there was no ambiguity except for me for the one thing of fixing the ship. That remember, which we talked about last week.
Yeah,
because I said like the sending a signal and sending messages and all of that, but being able to fix the ship the way that the ship was fixed, that to me wasn't something Chakotay could do.
Well, I figured it's Chakotay and some technology that he had access to or something,
Well, it was not the case.
Not in the least. So let's talk about that 2-part finale, where they finally show up where they got the coordinates at the end of episode 5, and it took them 3 episodes to get there because they had to do some side quests.
Yeah, it was a long journey. They mentioned like a lot of they're like, it's been a week, it's been this, it's been so time has passed.
It would have been 61 days if it weren't for the transwarp conduit.
Right.
Yeah, I'm glad that, the Janeway and the Voyager they were able to track them, and, they're not stupid people. They're Starfleet, they figured it out.
Yep.
Although Janeway is definitely in trouble with Jellicoe. Does any captain ever get away with the, I'm losing you?
Yeah, losing you. And she called him by his first name, and then she just was like, oh, what? I can't hear you. She's so good.
But I thought the reveal of Wesley Crusher was handled really well. I knew it was a traveler, or not a traveler. I knew it was a supervisor as soon as I saw the vault door.
Right. The very familiar looking vault door.
Vault door, supervisor, Picard turned supervisors into travelers. It's got to be, we saw Wesley in Picard when they did that.
It's interesting because, like, shit's happened to him. Like, he was like, he had a little touch of, he reminded me a little bit of the guy, of Matt Frewer in A Matter of Time, Rasmussen, like just a little bit crazy.
Yes, that's definitely there. I feel like that Wil Wheaton, but you also see this in the writing, they were channeling a lot of modern Doctor Who. A lot of the David Tennant, maybe a little bit of the Matt Smith Doctor Who. I don't know how much you've watched those shows.
I've seen like 2 Tom Baker episodes when I was a little kid.
The whole frazzled thing, the handing people's thing, saying hold this and wave it at the thing. I mean, it's all kind of straight out of Doctor Who. I felt like, and I remember Wil Wheaton talking about when he returned, he wanted to be a Time Lord, which is what the Doctor is. A Doctor is a Time Lord.
Right.
It's a specific term of art in that franchise. I think that's exactly what he was doing. But I also think they reflected that in the writing. And I'm not saying that as a criticism. It's just kind of the vibe I got from all of that. But that was, I mean, you didn't need to know that, but they were dropping some major things there about the travelers and the supervisors, and apparently they've all left the galaxy this timeline because they've decided it's over for us. The prime timeline's screwed, so but he stayed behind
because his mom's in the prime timeline.
Yeah, but no, I thought the introduction of the character was great. Perhaps too many mentions of the word of sweaters.
Yeah, I mean, look, he was wearing the sweater, which was a very specific Wesley Crusher sweater. And then he did mention sweaters a lot. But again, I have to remind myself of the audience. So kids watching it don't get it. Parents watching it get to be amused if they're Star Trek fans.
Yeah, no.
So that's what it's there for. It's those moments like, I loved Bugs Bunny as a kid, and when I watch it as an adult, there are references I get that I for sure did not.
Absolutely. I guess the multiverse stuff is kind of now normalized. It's in Marvel and stuff, because there was a lot of exposition in this episode. He was just dumping huge amounts of data on these kids, and therefore on the audience.
But the kids were reacting the way kids would. Like he's a nebulous, a galaxy short of a nebula or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But they were reacting like, what is up with this dude? Except Rock knew him as like a Starfleet Academy hero.
Right. I'm just wondering if people could follow like what his plan A and, because he kind of had a plan A, but that didn't work. And then he had a plan B. And then I think they moved on to plan C by the end. And it was all very complicated. What he was trying to do, who he was, how he was related to them and to Star Trek in general, but I could only watch it as a Star Trek fan, and I loved all of it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it reminded me of the creatures that were eating time and, like
the loom, they're
The
referred
loom,
to.
yes.
I called them yarn monsters as I was watching the episode.
I started calling them the Langoliers because my husband's a big Stephen King fan. And I remember watching this super cheesy TV movie based on one of the books. And it is these like weird creatures who go after those who waste time or something like that. And they're like eating reality. I was like, oh, they're like the Langoliers.
I mean, there's certainly terrifying space monsters. The design I felt was a little too on the nose for the Sentinels from the Matrix. But, what's terrifying about them is there's just nothing stopping them, and they don't really have any will. They just like to eat timelines, and our timeline's broken.
And they have those big wiggly bits and then these scary heads. So yeah, they were all pretty scary.
And nothing really works on them, although in the end, Janeway figured out she could like remodulate her phaser, and it kind of bothered them a little bit.
Yeah, it did. I mean, she explained what she was doing while she was doing it.
Right. She thought of it a little too late. I mean, she lost half her crew, it looked like. I mean, it looks like
I'm assuming they'll get them back.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that was some heavy stuff, because they were not only killing people painfully, but erasing them. I love that thing where she mentions, or Tysus mentions the red shirt. What was his name? I don't remember. But
oh, yeah. And she doesn't remember Middleton or something like that?
Yeah, and she doesn't remember because he never existed.
As soon as they went there, I was like, oh, red shirt's going to get it. He was such a red shirt.
But it was suitably terrifying. All those, I mean, but that's the thing of, are these good villains now? I guess time itself is the villain, because these things are just, you kind of can't be mad at them. They're just eating food, from their perspective. And our whole timeline is basically broken so they could come in and eat it. That's what they do.
Janeway's mad at them.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, there's no reasoning, there's no talking to them, there's no Borg queen eventually.
Right.
There's not going to be a summit meeting someday. There's not going to be an ambassador from the Loom at the Federation.
No. Janeway says something to that effect, quick. Like, she's like, well, when negotiating, or, when you can't negotiate, something like that, or diplomacy, she basically dismisses the idea of that and knows that right now she's got to just shoot them.
Shooty.
Shooty, even though initially they seemed unfazed by phasers.
Yes. They've used that joke before. They've
what was in the trailer too, that moment.
Yeah.
Did you Gary Seven's office?
Yes. Very groovy. I love the tiki drinks, the mango juice. No, I mean, that was all very fun, because he's like, the way he's sitting there saying, why don't people like mango juice? And everyone's like, they're not saying WTF, but you can see it in their faces,
yes.
But no, it was wonderful. And then, we saw the Beta 5, and it was, I was wondering, are we going to see Terry Garr? But I mean, this was I guess
that would have been awesome. That would have been so great. Or just to see Kirk and Spock in their coats and those overcoats.
But they weren't
running out.
If you listen closely, they weren't like, I thought, oh, they traveled through time and they are actually in 1968 USA, but they weren't. They were inside the ziggurat, deeper down, in a training room.
Yeah, he said it was like a pocket of subspace or something, or that. No, right. That's where the planet was. This is where yeah.
So basically, they train the supervisors in this groovy room.
Yep.
And then they recreate the groovy room in New York, or the other way around, who knows, but I mean, this is a serious episode where we had that thing where Majel is going to be eaten by the monsters.
And Wesley's like, too bad.
Right. He makes that difficult command decision. And Tysus talks about that earlier. Like, sometimes you have to make difficult decisions, as a Starfleet commander. Again, I know this is, Dal is not willing to make that kind of decision. Now, rightfully or wrongfully, it saves her life, and it turns out to be the right call in the end. I don't know. I thought that was a very interesting scene, to have these kind of moral quandaries and have the kids face this kind of big moral decision.
Yeah.
Although for all of them, it was an easy decision. They, she's now their friend. They started as, enemies. Even though in episode 6 there was that cliched moment when she comes into the mess hall and she won't sit at their table because they're the dorks. She sits at the cool kid table.
Well, she hesitates and then she goes back to her team.
But you remind it's a kids show. That's a kids show trope.
Yes, it is. Like the dancing, same. Like urging someone to dance when they're afraid. So, I mean, the thing is that Janeway had reiterated her Voyager rules of being a captain earlier. And one of them was, like, you don't leave anyone behind. So even though I don't think they were there at that moment to hear it, they didn't want to leave her behind. I mean, she came after them to save them, Majel. Yeah. So they were not willing to leave her behind.
Although Janeway, by firing at the creatures, she must have known as a veteran Starfleet captain that she was putting her Voyager crew at risk to protect the kids, the crew on the planet. My big gripe, though, with that scene is, unless this is like some weird homage to Voyager, I always thought on Voyager that Janeway would call Red Alert like way too late, right? Like after the thing attacks, whatever. Something's obviously dangerous out there, They enter like a weird space and it's like, it's too quiet. And it's like, okay, call Red Alert. Don't wait until something attacks you. But in this case, she was firing phasers at the monsters, right? Mm-hmm. And one of them, that she had called for maximum shields. One of them crawls through the shields, erases 2 crew members. Then she calls Red Alert after 2 crew members get erased. And I'm like, really?
Yeah, that's funny. That's actually in my notes. It says they start coming in, grab 2 crew members, Red Alert.
Riker would have called Red Alert as soon as he showed up at the planet.
Well, also, I love the way he says it. No one can say Red Alert like Riker. But
she did, it did give her the hero moment on the ship where she got to take her jacket off and do her John McClane, like in Macrocosm. It did take her a little while to figure out the shield thing. So I guess we end with her. She's alive, obviously, but how does she end? Oh, he sends her right. So Wesley sends her back
to the ship. Yeah,
right, and then he explodes, but he's not dead.
No, he's fine.
We don't really get his powers, but he's got some serious superpowers.
Yeah, he can do stuff with his mind.
Yeah, he can open doors in
close them and make stuff happen and get her back. He can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So
he's just a little addled by everything he's been through.
Because linear time, man, crazy.
Yeah, he's just trying to keep it all together.
I liked how when he meets them, which again is very straight out of Doctor Who, of like, oh, we haven't met. He implies that he's met them before, but they've never met him before.
Right. He's like, oh, wait, we haven't met yet. Right. Yeah. He sort of forgets.
From their perspective.
There's a great line right before they meet him when they're looking for, when Gwyn says, I think it's Gwyn who says it, it's not about the journey, it's the destination, which I love that twist.
Yes.
On that phrase. It was very nice. And then after that, they meet him a little while shortly after that. Crazy Wesley.
So he name drops, not only does he name drop Boreth crystals, which is from Discovery, but the orb. So that thing that he created is using the orb of time. He's stolen the orb of time from the Bajorans.
Oh, well, stolen. Maybe they're working together. He and the orb.
Maybe.
He also mentioned the mycelial network, and then was like, "Oh no, never mind."
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
Yeah, no, pretend I never said that. Nothing.
Yeah, I mean, that was like both funny, but kind of felt like a dig, but still funny.
Yeah,
it's not. I'm sure it's not a dig, but it kind of feels like a dig.
I felt like the reason it didn't feel like a dig is because it's Wil Wheaton who just loves all that stuff so much, like his Mr. Ready Room, happy, loving everybody thing. So. He wouldn't have wanted to say it like a dig.
No. Maybe the deepest cut in this is, so you see the giant statue of the Traveler and a giant statue of Wesley, which wasn't clear.
Yeah.
But if you listen closely, you could hear the Traveler. And they brought the actor back to kind of voice these little quiet voices. Did you notice those?
Oh, Eric, what's his name? Menyuk? Was it Menyuk or something like
Eric
that?
Eric Menyuk. Yes, they brought him back, and I thought that was really, because you could hear him saying some of the stuff from that original episode, and also some, but it's very subtle and quiet.
Right.
Because apparently he left. These are just echoes through time, I guess.
Right.
'Cause he and the other travelers they're off having fun in another universe.
Well, he had a whole calmness to him that Wesley does not have.
No, he's definitely not like that guy.
Yeah.
Nor is he like Gary Seven.
Yeah. No, he's like his own special self.
Right. Like I thought from Picard that they were saying the travelers and the supervisors were the same thing, but they're more work together as part of the same organization.
That was the sense that I got from that weird Picard season.
But I guess all those supervisors are gone too. There was that moment when Dahl asked about supervisors, like, how do you know about supervisors?
Or because he wanted to speak to his supervisor.
Yeah. Yes. But I felt like, even though they were all standalone, those previous episodes, it all tied together really well. These like episodic adventures then fed into this super dense, this was a season finale. I mean, I know it's really a half season finale, but it really felt like a season finale. And if this were on Paramount Plus, that it would have been a big block of time before they got to the next episodes.
I know.
It would have been
so
satisfying.
Excited to run off and watch the next one as soon as I turn off my mic.
Yeah. So if you want some Chakotay, you're going to get some in the next episode because there he is sitting on.
Yeah.
So what do you think's going on with the protostar? It looked old, but it can't be that old because his beard isn't gray.
Right.
It looks like it's been through some shit.
He looks like he's been through some shit.
But he's smiling. Did he see them? It's unclear if he saw the kids or not.
I just think he looked like a guy who just thought he was going to be there forever.
And it's an interesting planet because it's like sand dunes, but they're above the clouds. So it's like sand dunes that are as tall as mountains. And
it was beautiful. I was like, oh, where's this crazy red sand cloud place?
Yeah. One of the things that, and certainly when you watch it as a binge, you notice it, is as a kid's show, like, they're constantly reminding us we need to get to Chakotay so we can get to the protostar so we could get it. Like they're always putting up a little sign for us to say, remember, this is what we're after. This is the big.
They reiterate it a lot, but I do find it's not because it's a kids show. Maybe I guess somehow it's not. It feels more natural.
Yeah.
Than when I've seen them do it in other shows. And I don't even just mean Star Trek shows, but any other show where they kind of have to recap stuff. It can be done well or poorly, and I feel like they're doing it really, really well.
I mean, one of the things I certainly appreciated is how they talked about the multiple timelines. So the Kelvin universe got a call out, the Narada incident that mentioned, which I've always thought that like the mirror universe and the Kelvin universe are essentially the same in a notional sense. And he mentions that he's like, you got your mirror universe, you got your Narada universe. But he also mentioned fluidic space. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's a parallel universe. I never thought of it that way.
It's where species 8472 lives.
I like the map, the way they showed the map. I thought that was really well done. The exposition in that scene with the visual stuff was done beautifully.
Yep.
This may be the second time that a modern Star Trek show has made a direct reference to the Kelvin universe. There was one in Discovery when Kovic mentioned someone who crossed over from that timeline.
Right.
And I think this is only the second time. I could be wrong, but it's certainly, those are not highly connected things, that we, when you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they go out of their way to talk about all the multiple timelines and all that kind of stuff. And, maybe Star Trek should do more of that. So I appreciated it.
I do like that they're connecting to all the other shows. Like the Discovery mentions are nice because, obviously like Strange New Worlds comes from Discovery, but Discovery doesn't get a lot of shout outs or acknowledgement.
No. And there was a few here.
Yeah.
And obviously the whole Wesley story is parallel to Picard, if not born from Picard.
Yep.
This all worked very well with that, and I think is going to give us a much better send-off for, and that's certainly what the brothers are promising for Wil Wheaton. I think a lot of us felt in Picard, it's like, well, it's nice, but shouldn't he at least get a chance to say hi to Jean-Luc before he pops off?
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure we're going to see him interact with his mom or with Jean-Luc. But he did get to meet Janeway. She recognized him right away.
She knew who he was. He knew who she was. It was great. And, I like that he's kind of deranged. That this seems like a logical thing that would happen to him.
Yeah, because he became a traveler when he was quite young.
And now he's like in a frenzy, trying to race through and do all this stuff at the, it's sort of like a last ditch attempt to save everything. And then he's just trying to keep it all straight in his head.
We haven't brought this up, but something I noticed the show has always done, but is doing maybe a little more in these episodes, is there are multiple references to real science, right? Like the hypergiant and, the blue hyper. I mean, that's like a real thing of certain types of stars. They turn blue when they are at this size. And Rock talks about building blocks of life, and, that these are, real things that hopefully kids are Googling and learning about.
Yeah. I mean, I learned about a lot of real things from watching the original series, even though they made up a lot of things too. But I definitely researched things and learned things and formed some basic concepts because of those shows.
And apparently Chakotay, big fan of the blue stars.
Yeah, he loves the blue stars. It's nice.
I like a nice blue star.
Sure.
So I guess that's it for, part 2 of season 2.
Yeah. I can't wait to see more. I will be sad when I finish, I think.
Yeah, so many people I see. I appreciate that some of our listeners are following along with us, and we are trying to get the reviews out on the site in a timely fashion so you could follow along with those as well. Yeah, 5 episodes a week feels like a lot to me. The people who just did 20 in a row, God love you, if you did it in one day. But I'm liking savoring it a little bit.
Yes, just a breath, enough, not making myself crazy with it, but enough of a breath.
When we get to Lower Decks, it's going to be 10 episodes over 10 weeks again.
Yep.
Maybe they'll give us 2 in the first week like they did before, but we're going back to the old way.
Well, then we have more time. The prep time is a lot when it's 5 episodes.
That's true.
Because you and I both watch things more than once. So right. There's your first pass where you're just watching it to watch it. And then, these more attentive looks and going back and looking at things and whatever, taking notes and stopping to jot down ideas and thoughts and what it reminds you of. And
hashtag podcaster problems.
Yes, exactly.
But I do appreciate people following along.
And the ones who are ahead of us are having fun listening to us try to predict things and be wrong.
Right, which is almost certainly the case.
Yep.
Did we make any predictions that were way off in the last?
Well, I was pretty sure it was Chakotay sending the messages.
I guess my main things was I was off about Mijel, or maybe I just hadn't gotten. I just love what they did with Mijel in that last episode.
Yeah. All the way along when she goes up to the doctor and asks him about opera. So that he'll teach her to sing opera. Because she can tell they're trying to get away from him. And she just wants to help.
Yeah. I mean, he is so easy to manipulate on his ego. That is,
yes, he is.
How many times can they, because they did that trick before asking about, Zero asking about his latest Hollow novel. But I'm sure this time we've guessed a couple things wrong. Do you want to make any predictions so that we could, really put them out there for the next 5 episodes? So I'm saying no Chakotay Janeway in the next 5 for sure.
Right. And I think they will get together before.
I think there's going to be another big bad. I think it just can't be these monsters. I think there's going to be some kind of, I think the vow to see, we haven't talked about this. There's, we really don't know what's going on with Essentia. I think Essentia is coming back.
Oh yeah.
In big force. I think that's going to really be the big bad of the season is
they still have to deal with all of that.
Yeah. I think they're going to wrap up the time thing, although I think the time travel stuff can't be resolved that quickly. Anyway,
right.
We'll see.
Yep. Can't wait. All right. So 5, that's 10 episodes done. 10 to go. We're going to do 5 more next week. Let's wrap up. I have a bit of the week. I think you didn't have time to get one together. You've been scrambling to write 5 reviews a week, plus cover all the news. I have so much
Prodigy on my brain right now. I had a dream about Prodigy last night.
I love it. What was the dream? That's your bit of the week. What was your dream?
I can't remember the details. I just remember I was like, Chakotay was there and I was on some planet, that was, anyway.
I love it. I've had many a Star Trek dream, but I don't think anyone from Prodigy has showed up yet.
Yeah.
Well, I have this very, very brief and random fun fact, which is that I was listening to Katie Sagal, who you sci-fi fans know from Futurama, but she's on a bunch of other shows. She was on Married with Children, and she's had an incredible life. But anyway, Norman Lear, the great TV show creator, was her godfather. And she was talking to Rob Lowe on his podcast, literally, about how she would always be over there with her parents, and it was with Bud Yorkin, who was Norman's producing partner. And then she goes, and like all the early TV guys were always there. Even Leonard Nimoy was around. And I'm just trying to picture like Katie Sagal as a kid and Norman Lear and Bud Yorkin and Leonard Nimoy are all hanging around at Norman's house. I don't know. I was fascinated by this fact.
I'm surprised that Norman Lear didn't bring him onto like All in the Family or something. That would have been fun. A little Leonard Nimoy cameo with Archie Bunker.
I did notice when I was looking for any kind of like other evidence of this relationship, I didn't find a Norman Lear Leonard Nimoy relationship, but Leonard directed a movie that Katie was in.
Oh,
so maybe he knew her and was like, "Hey, why don't you be in this movie, The Good Mother with Diane Keaton," which was based on a great book. Anyway, that's it for this week, and come back next week for more Prodigy, more news, more everything. And leave us a review, please, because we really would like some good reviews. It's been a hot minute.
All right. Goodbye.
Goodbye.